Medo jana mi va Aveno TV. Egben keke ape wana. Me chitwa de me na efonye kom la gbochu. Medo gbene tepe kole. Me chitwa de pa fodo me. Henyi bana Aveno me chichi ukata. Togbiu mama o. Levi okole chichi ausia. Menyi bana mi. Mienya nu yekele jim le Ghana. Tu kwame. Mian toto, mian novi. Amo no. Amo sono. Amo nyune. Amo fofo. Jerry John Rollins etro megbe gbenemi dana kpui ade ko eye owo mudodo zametoto kpui ade ne le Obra Sport le gen le tefe ya amegero no tefe ma miaji ase nuchocho alo agbeme huntinya yoke ogbolocho miafofo Jerry John Rollins le Obra Sport le zametoto la me mia honu fo gbanto cho miape Duklo lakokwa amekenye aflaga chola na NDC dunya heha John Dramani Mahamagbo.
Opponents mistook it to mean that he was being deified like Jesus Christ. But all it meant was that his memory would live on and he will never die. It is the same with Jerry Rawlings. His memory would live on and it will never die. You'll always come across his memory. Recently, I went to their farm plains, and at a deba of chiefs and people, one of the chiefs, slightly elderly man, said that we were here and nobody knew that we existed, and that it was Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings who came and discovered us. And it is he who has made us who we are. Everything we have today, our roads, our hospital, the electricity, the water, it is his vision that brought all that to us. I thought that that was a very powerful testament. Many years after he left office, this chief was speaking very powerfully about what he had done for them. I'll just say a few anecdotes of some of my personal experiences with him before I read my official statement. We wrote to him. I was president, and cabinet had decided that the FPSOs that we use on our oil fields should be named after ex-presidents. And so the first one was named after Kwame Nkrumah, FPSO Kwame Nkrumah, and the Jubilee Field. The next one was named posthumously after President John Evans Atta Mills. And then there was the third one for the Sankofa Field. And the manufacturers were pressing us for a name, ENI. And so I got them to write a letter to him. And you know those presidential letters. In line with Cabinet's decision to name FPSOs after ex-presidents, I am directed by His Excellency the President to inform you that it has been decided to name the FPSO for the ENI Sankofa Field after you. Very imposing letter. And he wrote back to us, and he says he declined for the FPSO to be named after him. He says you can name it after any of our chiefs, our great chiefs, and he gave examples of those chiefs: Bewa, Jakpa, Prempe, and several others. And he said those famous words that I prefer to be remembered in the hearts of men than by monuments and statues. That was the man. And so, of course, the next FPSO, if you remember, was named after former President J.A. Kufuor. But that's one of the experiences with him. There was another time we attended a funeral together at the forecourt of the State House. And I was sitting next to him. And so when I sat down, I started exchanging pleasantries. And for those of us who have worked with him for quite a while, we know how to look out for his mood. There are sometimes he wants to be left alone. And there are sometimes he's in a good mood and he wants to chat. And so when you sit down, just recognize which of the moods he is in that day and just respect it. If he's not in the mood to talk, just keep quiet and sit. And so that's what we did. That day he was not in the mood to talk. I exchanged a few pleasantries and I realized he was not forthcoming. And so we just sat together quietly and watched what happened. And then later a newspaper or a radio station interviewed me and said, you know, but why were you sitting with Jerry and you guys were not chatting? And I said, you need to gauge his mood because it depends on which mood he has. And so if he's not in the mood to talk, you know, don't bother him with any long talk. There's another joke we shared at Hogbechocho. We were sitting together and the Agbaja was taking place seriously. And all the back, you know, moves and all that. And then I cracked the joke. I told him, I said, boss, I called him boss. You see why you Ewe men don't get backache? Because of the vigorous Agbaja and the back exercises you do. He laughed and didn't say anything. And then that occasion you saw was when he was being given a doctorate at the University of Development Studies. And while we were at that function, there was a cultural troupe from the north that was doing the Bamaya dance. And for those of you who know the Bamaya, it involves a lot of waist shaking. I thought he had forgotten about this, and he said, Chief, you see why you Northerners don't have waist pains? You see how they are shaking their waist? You know, I mean, that's the kind of person we have lost. One of my recent experiences was in the choice of our running mate. I had to consult all the leaders and elders of the party. I had done quite a lot of consultation, and we had fixed a date, a Monday, to take a final decision. And so I asked to see him on Saturday. And so I went and saw him that Saturday, and I read out the names of those who had been shortlisted without saying what my own preference was. And there were 5 names. So he asked me, he said, have you finished all the consultations? I said, well, there are just a few more. I have to see Alhaji Muhammad Idrisu and a few more of the Council of Elders. He said, okay, why don't you finish with them and then come back and let's, you know, discuss, and then you can make the final choice. So let's meet tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday. When do you say the event is? I said it's on Monday. He said, okay, but I'll be in Tefle. I said, oh, no problem. I'll drive out there. And then we can sit by the water and drink some coffee. So he agreed. And I left. I finished the consultations. The next morning, I was getting ready to drive to Tefle. And then he called me and said, Chief, I decided to spare you the journey. Don't waste your time driving all the way to Tefle. Look on your phone. I've sent you a text. And he went off the line. So I checked my phone. And he said, you didn't tell me your choice. But I knew that your choice was Professor Nana Jane Opoku Ajiman. He said, and you know his favorite, he said, she's a woman of integrity, and I think that you should go with her. That was the text. And so that sealed my decision. And everything else is history. But when the time comes, there are a lot of moments we shared with him that will be useful for us to put on paper in books for those of us who worked with him, so that future generations will know and understand the person that we are mourning today. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and our brothers and sisters around the world, and those joining us on TV via the internet. I thank you for joining us tonight as we pay homage to a most remarkable individual, a father, a husband, a soldier, a leader, a revolutionary, our comrade, president, a statesman, and my boss, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, the first president of our Fourth Republic. News of his death hit us like a thunderbolt. It is the kind of news that everyone can remember exactly what time, where you were, or even what you were doing at the time you heard the news. I was just arriving in Obuasi area to begin the third day of our campaign tour of the Ashanti region when the news was broken to me via a phone call. It was too shocking to be true. I made a few more calls to some close relatives to verify if the information I had had was true. And alas, our worst fears were confirmed. The last time I met him at his mother's funeral, and subsequently had a telephone conversation with him after the funeral, he sounded hale and hearty and didn't appear like anybody who was going anywhere anytime soon. I later learned he had been hospitalized when I was leaving for the Ashanti region. A quick call to one of his aides reassured me that he was taking a rest and being observed by the doctors after the stress and fatigue of his mother's funeral. Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings has been an enigma all his life, and no wonder his manner of departure from this world had to be sudden and totally unexpected. Like any leader, there were those who loved him and would lay down their lives for him. There are also, unfortunately, those who disliked him with a passion, and this is already reflecting in his life's postscripts being written by many authors. Since his passing, I've seen several postscripts eulogizing him, and I've seen a few others in anguish that he passed away so peacefully. This marks the end of an era, but it's also the beginning of an era. The persona of Rawlings bestrides Ghana like a colossus. His impact on the current trajectory of our country has been immense, and it's necessary for us to find the right balance to appraise his role as the founder of Ghana's current democracy. His life was tumultuous. His life was filled with tragedy and triumphs. Death is the ultimate leveler, and we must use this occasion of his passing to bring healing to our nation. He was our comrade, and we worked with him. I called him boss, and he called me chief. He was not perfect. Neither are we perfect. We had our disagreements, and we had our joyous moments of success. Having led this country for 19 years, longer than any past leader has and ever will, his impact on where our country has come from and where it is headed cannot be understated. Let us make his death bring us together. As the longest serving head of state of our country, he was the leader of the revolution. He was a royal of Anglo. He was the husband of our former First Lady, Her Excellency Nana Konadu Agyeman Rawlings. He was the father of Zaneto and her siblings. And also importantly, he was the founder of the National Democratic Congress, the NDC, and he was also a former president. So all these interests own the man, and these interests must come together to give him a simple but befitting farewell. What happens with our mortal remains are ephemeral. As was said by Shakespeare in the book Julius Caesar, the evil that men do lives after them, the good is often interred with their bones. For the cadres of the revolution and the members of the NDC, we must work and fight to ensure that his good is not interred with his bones, and that his positive impact on the history of this nation is preserved for posterity, and that the principles that he stood for are recounted to future generations yet unborn. Thanks to the organizers of this vigil, and may all who knew and appreciated him continue to celebrate his life. Knowing him and having worked with him, we all recognize his distaste for flamboyance, pomp, and pageantry. Let our party, therefore, NDC, the government, his family, and the Anglo state work together to celebrate his life and use his passing as an occasion for healing this nation and bringing us together again as one people with one nation and one destiny. These flaming candles we hold in our hands are symbolic of the good fight he fought. He struggled for us to remain together. His was a life well lived. Boss, your death is not an end, but a mark of new beginnings. Indeed, as you said, and I quote, we owe a sacred duty to Ghana to serve her people and help to achieve our legitimate aspirations. The worst crime is to abuse the trust reposed in us and thus destroy the hope of our people that the sacrifices we make will yield a better future for all of us. Quotations closed. Walk on. Stay well, brave soldier, senior comrade. Walk on. We're grateful for your life. We thank God for giving you to Ghana. May you rest in perfect peace. And may the flame you lit in Ghana continue to burn forever and ever. We will observe a moment of silence, both for our fallen founder, but also in memory of our former president, John Evans Atta Mills, and our former vice president, ÄKEKEA Misahata. Let's observe a minute's silence for these three personalities, but also for all the many comrades who have fallen in the battle. May their memories continue to live with us. A minute silence, please.
Yo, emanye miape edukulo la kokwa NDC tope aflaga cholape nyana alo mododo nyana Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings ebe abale sike Yesu Kristo fe nkudodo jili ikemebua nenemake Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings fe nuwana fe reyo alo nkudodo jia mabu gbarekegbe eglobe yedonku ejibe yo yide eduademe le dumama efia ikegbo yo yia yo kpobe kadi plechi meno edumama ke to Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings pe asito trobea eduma egbea kadi ple echi edogbo eyiji eglobe yezopli lemogede onu yekpli yofonu yeyona ebe amega eyona ebe efia yokpli pe azole zozoa dokola be efokpleche ene yodun kweji be afiyawo yepe tatia hena yepe du nyakeka nkplola chola ye knulo yepe agbame do de egbo yewo yepe tatia okata ye yefonu plamio yechwe do de ke egblo nai ebia ebe yebia amioa yefonu kolewa yedun nebe yewo de siade ke egblo na be elebe yowa dogo ne yowa wo adandodo ke yodue ela be egblo na be ya no tefle taidebe o ekama ya no vume avatu ile tefle ke lehun kekemea doko ekpobe edo message alo nyajojo alo nuwon ado dere le mofonuchi ke yevuya egblo na be ka hia be ya ava tefelo yenya nywere be epo no kpla mewo ewo fetatia ewo fe nusianu ke yenya be amerike tututu wodi be ne wa anye yefe kpere nto a anye professor Nana Jane Mensa ta yenya be anye amenyu etone ta yepo be edasire ejinai ke le emame a yefe mozozo me yide Cape Coast dunya ga o fe bubludodo me a de ko yoyo be nyade jokpata yefe fia yefa mega mega balio ye me kwesel ga ke le yoyo gere o megbe a yefa kpejesi be nya tefe nya wonye be yefe amega flight lieutenant Jerry John Rollins mega value etro megbe kpata le yogbo amega wonye ameke henye nu tefe wala ameke henye nu jojo wala ameke henye ameo kata lola metsiana memo eyanye ameke hejole yogbo fifela ta eyiji yefe adown dodo na duko kata be kekeli ke yosia nenye nkudodo ji nu na yo kata be de kawo na no yo dome be yo fe dukpolo lakokwa yo fe amega ye fe fia amonovi zinato pe fofo mia fe edukpolo la sono alo first lady fe enlola mega valewa nenye de kawo na mia duko kata ne mia a zodeji mia ayire jenu make aye mia sanu popo veliacho evia bubunato Dr. Zenatogbo.
Your Excellency, I would like to stand on previous protocols because the night is far gone and get straight to it. I would first of all like to thank all of you gathered here and all the other regions and those at home who are keeping vigil with us, because I recognize and I accepted a long time ago that he wasn't just my father, and we've always shared him with everybody else. And so if we are here today, we are here mourning not just our father, but the father of many. I would like to read from the Bible a couple of verses that came to me as I was told that I needed to come here and speak. And I read from Ecclesiastes chapter 3. For everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck that which is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to rend. And a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. What profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboureth? I have seen the travail which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised therewith. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also he hath set eternity in their heart. Yet so that man cannot find out the work that God hath done from the beginning even to the end. I know that there is nothing better for them than to rejoice and to do good as long as they live. Most of the previous speakers have spoken about the values and principles that my father lived by. values and principles which, within his power, he did everything to instill within the government that he led. An inclusive one, which even before the era of constitutional rule, understood the value of everybody's opinion being part of decision making. As we stand here today to honor his memory, I will leave you with a quote from my father. We often get lost in the games of politics and often forget our North Star should be our principles, values, and kindness to one another. We often get lost in the games of politics and often forget that our North Star should be our principles, values, and kindness to one another. In many ways, this is summed up by the golden rule, that we treat each other as we would love to be treated. I pray that as we enter this period towards the election on the 7th of December, that we let these values live within us and we absolutely protect what we have as a nation, because that is how we will honor his memory. I thank you and God bless you all.
Mabiao wonupola nukanya wo susu cho mianovi ya ofe wutinya alo agbeme wutinya okekene cho miape dokplo la kokwa hu alekene bui nukanya wo ta mesusu nukanya wo jimedidi miadibe na aduedami ne mia akhle na duaja ne wase ke mayideji Dr. Senator kle fofo ape agbeme wutinya eglobe meda akpenami be mieleza sia metom kplimi me va kpo be menye fofo nye deka yo ke eduo kata alo duko kata ope fofo wonye ke afima yide ejia makran bibla menya adewo nami cho Ecclesiastes be agbaneta eton eglobe reyele be na bunu reyele be na kponu reyele be wa fofonu reyeli bo wa kakanu reyeli bana tundudo reyeli bana wa gbanu reyeli bana nlon reyeli bana gbledi ayike bepo fofonye bepo be enye duko kata fenlola aye metia memo enlo adevio kple chichiao ehiato kple gato kata ehiao de doko enwuti tale efe kukuyama be kaneji be anye deka owo anomia duo kata kple dunya keka o kata dome ke afima wu enua makhle enyare cho fofonye fe numenya ome atu anami mi buna le dunya keka fe dan wowo ome dodo nukpokpo kple dome nyo na me osiame ke meda akpe alo medo gbera be esike mi le akoda nyawo pere yomia miape dukpolo la kokoa Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings spoke kokoa awebe de kawo nwuti fafa ple anukwade toto ano miape nuwo na okatame abe ale ike wono ene efe nonome efe fodede efe zozo efe nuwo nawo na nye miafe kpodewu le dukome ne mi azodeji hena miafe nwuti fafa mia yedeji enumake eye mi akọ nufu etonlia cho agbanejigala kokoa na NDC dunya heha gbo.
Your Excellency, former President John Dramani Mahama, and comrades gathered here, I also want to proceed by the protocols established by earlier speakers. I want to begin by asking a very simple question. And that is to say that after the passing of President Rawlings, there seems to be a meeting of minds about the fact that he was not only a great man, he was a great Ghanaian and great African. But what will be left of a great man if his great works are taken away from him? Everybody becomes ordinary without great works. It is the great works that make the difference between an ordinary man and a great man. So I want to ask another question as to how best, if we all know that President Rawlings was a great man, a great statesman, how best can we honor his memory? And my view is that the best way of honoring the memory of a great man is to continue doing what he would have done if he were to be alive. And that is why I think that this vigil is a very important contribution to his memory. We all know that every December 31st, the cadres and the NDC observe the beginning of the revolution by keeping vigil at these same grounds. So that is why the leadership of the party felt that the best way to start honoring our fallen hero is to begin with this vigil. President Rawlings, when he was alive, did not take pleasure in monuments being named after him. In fact, there were several occasions where he resisted the attempt to name monuments after him. His life also showed that he abhorred ostentatious living and ostentatious funerals and ceremonies. He kept reminding us that the best tribute we can keep to his memory is to hold dearly the principles of June 4th, based upon which the NDC was established. And so, my dear comrades, I believe strongly that the way to keep President Rawlings alive is to observe the principles of June 4th, to keep on practicing what he cherished most, and for my comrades in the ÄKEKEA fraternity, for us to be reminding ourselves about the simple things he did to show that he cared for his fellow Ghanaian. President Rawlings showed in many ways that leadership is done by example. So even as he called for communal labor, he will not be sitting in his office. You will see him right there in the trenches, in the gutters of Nima, holding shovel and desilting gutters. Now, if you see the leader engaged in what he's admonishing the followers to do, who will not follow that leader? He also admonished us that in the past, it was sufficient to blame our offenses on directions from above and from our superiors. But June 4th taught us that it is wrong, and that every individual has a conscience, every individual has a duty to this nation. And so if you are given instructions which you consider to be injurious to the welfare of the state, you have the right to defy those instructions and to resist. And that was what came to be known as positive defiance. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe sincerely that what is missing in our democracy, which is creating problems of corruption, nepotism, and lack of transparency, is the lack of the spirit of positive defiance. We have all the institutions which are designed to check the abuse of power. Our problem is the attitude of the people who populate the institutions. If politicians order security men to turn the guns they have been armed with to protect the citizens into suppressing the citizens they are intended to protect, we expect that professional security men will say, no, sir. We have sworn to defend the citizens. So we are on the side of the citizens against the abuse of power. But how many of our security men can do that? If public servants are impressed upon by politicians to create opportunities for the politicians to loot the state resources, with the spirit of positive defiance, we expect the chief directors and other public servants to say, no, sir. We have sworn to protect this nation. But what is happening today, the nepotism we are seeing, the corruption we are seeing, which in several ways can be said to be worse than what prevailed before the June 4th. It is happening because we have abandoned the important principle of positive defiance. So the best way to remember President Rawlings is for us to go back, not to be reciting the principles, but to find out what those principles mean to our democratic survival, and to pledge to live by them. The first few people who want to practice positive defiance may suffer for it, but eventually they'll prove to be martyrs who have sacrificed their lives to save this, our democracy. Again, President Rawlings spoke constantly about accountability. Many of us just mentioned probity, accountability, without taking a step to find out what does accountability mean. There are a lot of people who think that when you talk about accountability, it's just about accounting for money. Money is part of it. But the most important way to hold ourselves accountable is to account for power and authority. Because we have been told by cadence. I will reduce it into singing that power belongs to the people forever and ever. It is from this that we learn that anybody who finds himself in a position of power is just there in a position of trust. Hold the power, utilize the power to protect the masses, to seek the welfare of the masses, and to account to the people at the appropriate time as to how that power has been utilized. And one key principle means of holding people to account for how they use their power is through free, fair, and transparent elections. So if we are all preaching that we want to honor President Rawlings, let's honor him by keeping the structures that can hold people in power to account for how they use the power that has been entrusted into them by the masses. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I believe I have spoken enough since the demise of our founder. But I want to remind all of us that the little things that President Rawlings took pleasure in doing, we believe that his memory shall be better observed by doing some of the things that he took pleasure in doing during this time of mourning him. I have mentioned his pleasure in accompanying the masses to undertake communal labor. And I want to believe that the party followers throughout the country can best honor his memory by at least dedicating one day in your various constituencies, in your various branches, to undertake a massive clean-up exercise in remembrance of President Rawlings. On the eve of every June 4th celebration, we undertook route marches. If you don't know route march, you can turn it into this modern day keep fit, health walks, and so on. I want to believe strongly that one of the best ways to honor the memory of President Rawlings is for the party rank and file in their various branches, constituencies, and regions to undertake these route marches on the days to be determined by them according to their traditional calendars. I believe that if this is done, President Rawlings will be smiling wherever he is. And finally, the principles are good, but they remain impotent without our power to implement them. So if you are in opposition, you may have the best of ideas, but you cannot implement them. You can only be reciting them. So the best tribute we can pay to the memory of our founder is to accomplish the rescue mission. That will position us to implement the principles he lived and died for. He taught us that in every struggle, when comrades fall, we walk over their bodies to ensure that the mission is accomplished before we come to count the dead. So, ladies and gentlemen, be fired up by the temporary demise of our founder to win these elections and rescue this nation, Ghana, which was dear to his heart, from the very ills he has fought against all his life. Corruption today is worse than what he fought against on the occasion of June 4th. Nepotism today is worse than what occasioned the June 4th. So how can we say that President Rawlings has been a good man, he has been an African, and yet all the things he lived and died for will not be commemorated? We will abandon them and still pretend that we are honoring his memory. Ladies and gentlemen, let us walk our talk. Let us fight to come to power. Let us revisit the idea of June 4th becoming one of the national holidays. We can only do this when we are in power. In opposition, it cannot be done. If the current government thinks that President Rawlings was a great man, then let them honor his great works. And his great works can be remembered if we observe June 4th, at least for one day when the nation will stand still, go back and review what June 4th stood for, and to re-energize ourselves to live by the principles of June 4th. I thank you very much, and may President Rawlings live forever.
Aje egomea mabia babia siabe le Jerry John Rawlings pe kumegbela takpepe adeyiji le miafe do pe sekpo asika kunya ogbo aye wo gbolobe enye amedengo amewonu jojuwe le Ghana le Africa pour kkekea mekata ke nye babia evelia nyebe ne amadenye amedengo nu tefe wolade ke nu kai wolebe wawo atwa donkoji nu ike wolebe wawo atwa donkoji konyebe nu ikenye efe jime titi fe vito eke wonu agbea wawo de ejine eye wana be wa vaime ke dukpolola akukwa Jerry John Rawlings fe jime titi fe vito eke wonu agbea enyebe wa adebubu alo adu June 4th le resia ike wodonai ke nenyebe mitibe mi adebubu alo mi agabubu ade mi afa dukpolola efe dodo efe nu ike woti efe jime titi veveto abebubu dede wena ke mi agbogbo agede megbe adonku efe afodede o efe dodo efe nukula amenya o efe no du anyi o eye mi asodeji agadebubu enwuti ke le efe jime titi veveto abe June 4th dudumea dukpolola menye ameke hitoru kwe dadio enye ameke nye subola esubo amegbeto pletu mevio sia bedon kwejibe eke odo dume jajrado alo jajenyenye wowope jajrado a yento gere mekpele soheo eye wo jrado amedo eye wo jojo nyenye alo jajenyenye do le dukome ke abe dume vinwe abe dukpolola nywe ameke kitia mokata penya ameke nye amega ameke nya srafo dengo fe jimediti veveto a abe dunya gegao elebe mia adonku efa fodedeo abe NDC dunya gega mia lenku de fe dodon mia lenku de fa fodedeo eye mia wo efe nononu na wa avame esia anye bubu dede veveto yike mia ton ana mia fe dukpolola mia ayideji asenufo bubu acho bia fe so ta pepe menola ejire sogbon.
The next president to be of the Republic of Ghana, and her able running mate, Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. A reflection of Excellency John Dramani Mahamad's respect for affirmative action in many enterprises of our public life. We are gathered this evening devastated in grief following the sudden death of our founder, President Jerry John Rawlings. There is a lot of historical writing and political commentary about the man Jerry John Rawlings. I call him the people's man, the ordinary man, and the man of the people. There are even those writers who have confused him without understanding his values and ideals to describe him as a populist. Populist because he worked for the masses and he worked with the people. For the young generation in the NDC, particularly my colleagues, who belong to the second epoch of the Jerry John Rawlings history making, we were not part of the revolution. We were not part of the military actions. We are part of his democratic Ghana. So for navigating the difficult waters of militarism to multi-party constitutional democracy, it remains his enduring legacy to Ghana. That gesture of free, fair elections in the words of Ali Mazuri and Shillington, without attempting to manipulate the system, without attempting to amend the constitution to give himself an additional term, only manifests a commitment to what we have today, a peaceful, stable, democratic Ghana, thanks to the visionary leadership of Jerry John Rawlings. As we eulogize him today, there is no shortage of essential foods in Ghana today. Even nkeke and fish is available. Not to talk of milk, not to talk of bread, not to talk of sugar. The question is not its availability, but its affordability. Excellency John Dramani Mahama, when you come, as you will do come, to leave the legacy of Jerry John Rawlings will be to make those essential commodities affordable, but not just available to the masses of Ghana. To his enduring legacy, he laid the foundation. Today, even some political parties have sought to borrow from him quietly, saying that they are liberal. If they go back to memory lane, it is to the credit of Jerry John Rawlings that he opened up the state of Ghana to private sector participation with his economic recovery program. Therefore, he liberalized, in some sense, even with state dominance, the economy of Ghana that we have inherited today. He's made his contribution remarkable to the social, political development of our country. I cannot conclude eulogizing Jerry John Rawlings, but by quoting him, that let his legacy see the NDC and Excellency John Dramani Mahama win the 2020 election, upholding his fundamental values of probity, justice, and accountability. Let the AF Parliament usher in Dr. Ezeneta. The people of Osuklote, we need her in Parliament to let the Rawlings legacy live in Parliament. I cannot conclude. For those who do not understand again Jerry John Rawlings, they ask that where is probity, where is justice, where is accountability? They were not words for a journey. They were words for consciousness. Today, from the president to the chief justice to the minister to the MP, we are accountable to the people of Ghana thanks to Jerry's vision of probity, justice, and accountability. Even if sugar or a fowl of the state is missing, Ghanaians are free today to ask that minister, that president, what have you done with state resources? To the legacy of Jerry Rawlings with the consciousness of probity, justice, and accountability. There were values we are to imbibe. And to the young generation of NDC, we can commit more than to commit to a peaceful, free, fair elections for Ghana, which will see Excellency John Dramani Mahama and Professor Nana living and leading the legacy and work of Jerry Rawlings. I thank you.
Akpe embanye Haruna Idrisu pe agbeme untinya gbogbo na miafofo Jerry John Rawlings Haruna Idrisu anye minority speaker na NDC dunya ha le so ta pepe me eglobe meyo be amewo fofo amewo novi ple amewo fedela mienye asrafo ke mienye asrafo alo wo ablode na Ghana fe go mekpolao akpena le wo agbagba jeje hena Ghana fe ngoyi me eji eglobe edo gome do penyu hena Ghana fe ganya ofe ngoyi ewe kekea keko ha be do kwisi do wala ha o ha ofe wo le wo me hena Ghana fe ganya ofe ngoyi efonu globe duplola wo Jerry John Rawlings fe afodedeo bule fe nu popo a ewe be egbea Ghana nye Ghana be dumevi okpomo be nenye be eso ta pepe menola de wona de yikemenyo alo zaga le majamaje nyenye noa okpomo abiagbe eya okata nye miafofo Jerry John Rawlings fe afodede yoke wo dedaran eji egbolobe nenye be miedi be Jerry John Rawlings amekanye duplo la kokwa ekeme gavalo fe nu popo na vaima ekema mi atakona evia Dr. Zenato le epe akoda nu toame bena wa gbogbova se ota pepe me be efofua alomiato Jerry John Rawlings fe afodedeo alo fe adanwo efe nu popo a watwa ajeji eji egbolobe yematen awuno nenye be yemedu ere du agbo be no dibe mi afofo Jerry John Rawlings fe nu popo na Ghana duko fe chome na jeji a ekema wa adakona edupolola alo NDC flagachola Mahama ple efekpere unto Professor Nana Jane Mensah be NDC alo miafofo Rawlings fe nu popo ngoyi popo na Ghana duko a aten aje eji mia aiji ahonufo cho miato ababin gbo.
It's really very, very difficult to say a few words about our father in this shocking moment. We are still trying to understand what has happened. And I think many of us still don't believe that he has departed physically from us. I saw our late founding father in 1979 at the Burma Hall when he was being tried for single-handedly leading an event which some people refer to as a mutiny. What you have known me to be is his making. That is not my nature. Those who knew me before he changed me knew that I was a very calm, gentle fellow. I scarcely spoke. I was very pensive and studious. And because of that, in Legon, I was made the chairman of the disciplinary committee of Legon Hall. So by nature, I'm a gentleman. But because His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings was God's gift to Ghana, he did so many unthinkable things that changed many of us. As a young student, it was unthinkable at that time for somebody to attempt to overthrow a military regime that was very, very repressive. I recall the number of times, in fact, it was during that regime that the police were given armored vehicles. And as students, I can recall vividly the struggles we had with that regime and the number of students that were killed during those struggles, particularly students of Commonwealth Hall. But when the Director of Prosecutions, Justice G.E.K. Akins, read his speech at the Burma Hall, it just set a flame in the whole country. We were all caught and gripped in the passion of the man called Jerry John Rawlings. And that is where it all began. Because he was God's gift, God spoke through him. And after that, all what happened to him was not done by him, but it was gifted to him by God. I said it because you all recall that the June 4th revolution, that event was not led by him. It was his colleagues who even liberated him and called him to lead the revolution. And he led the revolution. In fact, that was the time I understood what they call a servant leader. Many of the young men and women now cannot picture how Ghana was at that time. But at least they would have read or heard that Ghana was called Ojakrom. Ojakrom. And that almost all our professionals were voting with their feet out of this country. Again, on the 31st of December, I was then working at the Central Bureau of Statistics under the Ministry of Finance. And I was leading a team of workers through Burma camp to the office when we were caught in the crossfire. Definitely, for our own safety, we were put in the guard room. And you could see how people were shaking because of the exchanges of gunfire. I had to go around and keep the spirits of the staff that were with me. And immediately after that, the then governor statistician under who I was working was called to report to the Gonda barracks. You know the language at that time. Without fail, by some time. And he had to look for me. Then a law student at the Ghana Law School to lead him to the Gonda barracks. And those days, Gonda barracks was a no-go area. The number of vehicles that were there with the MOAS pointing and the men with red eyes ready to act, you dare not get near there. And so you heard a shout from far away, "Stop!" And we had to halt. And then another shout, "Come out!" My governor's assistant could not and had to come out and walk all the way to the military officers and introduce myself and said I was bringing Dr. So and so. He may not want his name to be mentioned here. And I had to, on daily basis, send people to Gonda barracks and stay there with them for the whole day till the night. At that time, he was tapping the brains, the knowledge, the wisdom of very respectable Ghanaians all over the country. So that is how the foundation of the PNDC was laid. I was lucky then because my lecturers, you know, our legal wizard, Chajuchikata, Professor Kwamina Hoy, and the rest were part of it. And so we knew some people. And we admired and respected them so much that once they joined that course, we knew it was the right course to join. Apart from the charisma of the personality, the charisma of integrity of the leader, and the passion, the infectious and contagious passion of His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings swept all of us off our feet. And I never regretted, and I will not regret following that course. Again, another unthinkable thing happened. I was with some senior personalities discussing the strategies we could put in place to make sure that we had a peaceful, free, fair elections. When one of them whispered to me, "Have you heard?" I said, "What?" They said, "His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings is no more." That was a thunderbolt. Some people say that I've eaten the tortoise. So you can scarcely get tears from my eyes. But tears flowed through my eyes. I was shocked because after the funeral of his beloved mother, our grandmother, he sent a message to me. He wanted to meet me. There were a few things we wanted to discuss as to the way forward. and this was not to be. But I believe he is not dead. Physically, he has left us. But I am sure he is still with us. And I know the day of Pentecost will come, and we will all be fired up. For 7 January 2021, I am sure His Excellency John Dramani Mahama will be sworn in as the President of Ghana.
Akpe Emanye Honorable Alban Bagbin, American Deputy Speaker, le Sota Pepeme, Fe Nyaona Dukulo Lahua, Eglobe, Mia Amegedeo, Mia Kwasebe, Mia Fofo, Kuo, Mekpo, Mia Fofo, Alo Mia Pe, Dunya Dola le 1979, le Bema Hall, Eglobe. Amegede onya alesiele onya be yemefuano yelekpo ke ameke enye egbea eto miafe dukpolola kokwa Jerry John Rollins ji be egbea ye ha ye vanye ameke yenye egbe eji eglobe le eve afodede omea ewebe totro gede va Ghana dukome eye to efe nuowo omea ewebe afoko gede over to Commonwealth Hall fe masome gake le efe nufu mea ewebe nuwo alo susu kple afodede nyueto over eji eglobe Jerry John Rollins enye mawuga fe nunana na Ghana duko afonu kude June 4th fe abawo eye woglobe awowo sia mecho egbo kebon echo povito fe wona ogbo ikewebe maso ya edotara keto efe afodede omea ewebe nwuti fafa alo eseji wowa evale Ghana dukwame eji eglobe ameyoke nokpli le reyi ma omea wanya nko yona na Ghana dukwa ayi oglobe nko yona na Ghana dukwanyebe jobibi duko ebe yedonku ejibe afodede wo webe le Ghana fe sawome nwuti fafa vale akodanya ome eji eglobe ye kaneji be chitrechichi nkeke ava le December pe nkeke Andreaji eye kaneji be wa ado mia pe aflaga chola John Dramani Mahama ple Professor Nana Jen Mensa abejirula le Ghana dukwame be dukpolo la kokwa Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rollins fe no popo plepe didi plepe nko ayeji le Ghana dukwame miaji asenu popo achu Honorable Ampofogbo
Dramani Mahama, the next President of the Republic of Ghana. Her Excellency Professor J. Nana Opoku Ajiman, our incoming Vice President and the first female Vice President of the Republic of Ghana to be. Our former First Lady, and all protocol as established observed. The NDC party was founded on the vision of one person, His Excellency Jerry John Rollins. It is upon his vision and his insights, his principles that ushered in the NDC in 1992. Today, He is physically no more with us. But the principle that he stood for will still live with us forever. One of the principles that His Excellency J.J. Rawlings cherished and lived and died for is the principle of social justice. And his definition of social justice is simply explained by the fact that as Ghanaians, we are all entitled to the basic essentials of life. In 1979, I was a student and I was traveling from ÄKEKEA to Tiase in the Afram Plains district. It took us 14 hours to make that distance because the road was terrible, and if one of the mummy trucks that had gone to Afram Plains gets stuck on the road, all the rest of you will have to sleep until the next day. And that was the experience that I had when we had a holiday and I was traveling with some colleagues of mine to Tiase in the Afram Plains district. There was no electricity there. In his quest to ensure social justice, President Rawlings ensured that rural electricity or rural electrification was aggressively pursued. And all the nook and cranny of this country, he made sure that electricity was extended to every village, every community, and every town. That was his concept of social justice. President Rawlings felt that good drinking water is as good for the people in the urban and peri-urban communities as it is to the people in the rural areas. And so by that time, we only had the Ghana Water Company Limited, which was primarily responsible to ensure that good drinking water is extended to people in the cities and the towns. As a result of his principle of social justice, he realized that there was a need for the people in the rural community where I belong to also have good drinking water. And so he established the Community Water and Sanitation Agency, responsible for rural water supply. And as a result of that, President Rawlings was always excited when a borehole is constructed in a community. He travels from Accra to the community and commissioned the borehole because he realized that water is life. And if you give people water, you are giving the people social justice. You are establishing or practicing inclusiveness. So before he left office, he launched Water for All by the year 2000. Those of you who remember. This is the man who thought about the ordinary people. This is the man who identified himself with the wishes and aspirations of the ordinary Ghanaian. President Rawlings was worried about guinea worm to the extent that he embarked on an aggressive guinea worm eradication program. And today, as we speak, by the grace of God, guinea worm has been eradicated from our society, courtesy the vision and the policies of the man we are honoring tonight. President Rawlings believed in the adage, power to the people. And for that matter, through the principle of power to the people, he committed himself to decentralization and local government policies. Establish and increase the number of districts from 65 to 110, and make sure that the ordinary people are given voice in the various municipal, metropolitan, and district assemblies. ensured that several people within the community, representing women, representing traditional authorities, representing the disabled, representing active economic groupings, were brought on board the district assembly concept so that everybody will have a say in what happens in their own environment. This is the man we are honoring today. And so when he launched the NDC party in 1992, it did not take me any time at all to embrace the idea and join the party. And I have not regretted joining the NDC, because in this country, when it comes to development, the NDC is the party that has developed this country more than any other party. As philosophical and strategic as he is, knowing that one day he will not be with us, President Rawlings decided to wean himself gradually out of the party. People don't understand it. Today, the understanding has come clear that even though he was the chairman of the Council of Elders of the party, he decided to step back and let other people take over. He gave us the opportunity. I remember in 1997 when I was appointed as a deputy minister and my appointment was challenged. He called me to his office. He said, "Young man, I will give you a chance to prove yourself." It took 3 weeks to vet me. And at the end of the day, I was approved. And I went to him and I faced him eyeball to eyeball. And that day, it was something else. He urged me on, that carry on. His words of inspiration, his mentorship, his leadership style is what has brought all of us, young ones, to come to the level of party leadership. So as you eulogize him tonight and as you celebrate his life, there is only one thing I ask of you. Let's close our ranks. Let's come together. Let's actively participate in this rescue mission to rescue Ghana. Let us remain focused. Very, very, very focused. Especially in the times that we find ourselves. We have very, very little time at our disposal to complete the rescue mission. Don't let us take our eye off the ball. Let us focus. Focus on the election, because we need to win this election. The best tribute that we can pay to the memory of our founding father is to win this election convincingly, so that we can continue to uphold the flame of the principle that he stood for. The principle of social justice, the principle of transparency, the principle of accountability, the principle of popular participation. These are time-tested principles. And I believe that if we all come together with one spirit and one accord, there is nothing that the NDC cannot accomplish. And I want to assure His Excellency, our incoming president and our incoming vice president, that the party structures at all levels will be mobilized in these coming weeks, even though this temporary halt has slowed down the momentum that our campaign has generated. We will rekindle and redouble our effort to put more fire and energy into the campaign, because that is the only way that we can immortalize the principle that Jerry John Rawlings stood for. I believe that we are up to the task and we'll come together and deliver a resounding victory. And on that day, 7th January 2021, when His Excellency, the new President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, lift up the state sword and is swearing the oath and is looking up, he will be looking up to the heavens and be doing that to glorify the memory of the party founding father, His Excellency, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. May his memory and his principle live with us and live in our heart forever and ever. Aluta continua. Thank you and God bless us all.
Anye Samuel Ofosu Ampofu NDC Dunyage Hafe National Chairman fe Mutinyana Miato Jerry John Rawlings Globe NDC Dunyage ha Gomedoro Anyi Nye Bubuna Miato Rawlings fe Agbagbajeje ke eji Globe efe nuowo alo efe afodedo webe NDC Dunyage ha vajo le 1992 pere yome Globe EGBEA megali o ke efe dodo ano anyi tegbe eji Globe ke le efe nupopo alo nujojoe wowonu la Globe kadi rere yide kofewo ple gologiomea va eji le dukwame egbe to miafe dukpolo la kokwa Jerry John Rawlings fe afodede okpolo nujojo owojia ewebe enu gedeo anongo enya gedeo ovale miafe kofewo ple gologio katame Globe le efe agbagba jeje mea ekpo be chinyui ple jaje nyenye fe nukpokpo oyide miafe kofe okple edugan mesia eyiji Globe le efe nu owo mea eya ihe enu ikawo den kona be chinyui zaza le fe akpe alafa eve fwe yome ke eji Globe esia enye nwuchusi kpoa edokwe kple ameda heo kple gato kple amewo kata mede edokwe le dekemo eji Globe to efe afodede omea ohenu chichi alo dolele ko demo oden kwana be ato dolele a fenu chichi heva dukwame aye EGBEA edoeke olena eke oden kwana be ato dolele megale dukwame to efe do nawo alo efe afodede ome ke ekolonu dukwa kple NDC Dunyage ha okata be wa do movevie ado unse aye wa veli to bobe yofo fe ku webe eji keno yofo hena bubludodo hena jirudu a evanye gba vie nkekea yo kanejibe yo agere yo fe to kome eye yo avli ado adan ado bublu eye jijo alo nkokpepopo ekele yo mea aga yire eji ke yo le mokpom be le January pe nkeke andre ike wado miato dunya gera pe aflaga chola na NDC John Dramani Mahama ale state sword alo atam kaila adoreji akatam alada ajogbe na dokoa awe hena miape dukpolo la kokwa Jerry John Rawlings fe bubu ple nukpokpo fe nkoyi kaka no finye nyade kameti mama biao afine mi aiji de o hiabe ne ame okuvo afikomi ava gbolo pe nyanyewa de o hiabe ne ame omega leo afikomi akponya de agbolo de menyu be no lagbe mi akafu wapo wanya be nu ike yo enyowa de mi yovo be o criticize mi gbolo nya gede o achu no lagbevo no kuvo mi ava gbolo pe nyanyewa nu ike nye wo nu popo nu ikenye wo dodo wo tamsusu a heve enemia ane na duaja miaji aye mi afemia fe nu popo susu ya cho honorable Abudakwe fe etefe no lagbo.
Thank you very much. I am here to read this statement on behalf of Senior Comrade Ambassador Dan Abudakwe. We are gathered here tonight to keep vigil for the departed soul of the founder of our great party, the NDC, and the founder of Ghana's longest and most peaceful republic, the Fourth Republic. Vigil is kept for two reasons: either to hold prayers or to hold a protest. it is important as comrades of the great NDC to understand why we are gathered here tonight. We are not here tonight for a fanfare or to campaign. We are assembled here because our great NDC and Ghana has been hit by unexpected and a devastating tragedy at a time most crucial in the life of our party. It is a moment for us to undertake a deeper reflection not only on the demise of our founder, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, but most importantly on the future of our great party, the NDC. It is not a night for political slogans to ginger party members, but a night to deeply reflect on our conduct so as to ask deep and searching questions for our conscience to answer in prayer. Indeed, it is a time to also protest against ourselves in the quietness of our vigil and meditation. A protest to remind ourselves of whether the foundational pillars and values of NDC, which the founder stood for and defended all his life, can be sustained in coming days and in the years ahead. Let us sincerely and soberly search our souls in these difficult times. Besides the Fourth Republic, NDC is the greatest living legacy Jerry John Rawlings has bequeathed to us and to Ghanaians. And his legacy shall and must be protected and defended at all times. It is the only legacy which has brought hope, equality, equity, justice, accountability, probity, and development into our body politics. His Excellency Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings deserves a befitting state burial, not an ostentatious state burial, but a burial ceremony that should reflect his simple, ordinary, and magnanimous lifestyle. The NDC, in consultation with its family, allied family, and Anglon/Volta traditional rulers, shall demand full participation in the pre-burial and burial arrangements. The NDC, which is Jerry John Rawlings' living legacy, shall honor him by participating in his funeral and burial activities. It will be unconscionable and an indelible blot on the conscience of NDC not to honor our founder by not playing key activities and roles in his burial ceremony. In moving forward, this is a period for sober reflection. Our utterances on the death of His Excellency Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings should be decorous, devoid of rancor and opportunism. Mutual respect among stakeholders and eschewing of excessive partisan score is required in planning the funeral activities so as to honor our founder. Jerry John Rawlings positively impacted many lives, from the street hawker to leaders of nations. Let us create the opportunity and the platform for them to pay their last respects. Long live Jerry John Rawlings. Long live the legacy of Jerry John Rawlings. Long live the NDC. Long live Ghana. Thank you.
Akpe emanye former ambassador na Ghana dukwale Germany ameke le chitodeme na honorable Abudakpi eglobe mi duan le susu gedeota amoro duan hena ahowo ke amoro duan hena nkukodo dodo nuji ke mi o mi ape ntodo a enye nkudodo mi ape dukpolo lakokwa Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings pe kukunhuti eyiji eglobe dodo wowode efe didi alo efe koko nwa majiji alo adeji nenyebe bide efe pometo fiawo yokecho anglon ple jelukofe mia to afe duome mia doda le emo ke yije kolon no blobe nenye be miedibe mi akpo mi afofo pe tadojinu le efe dodo yo ke wo mebe wa yingo a ekama elebe mi ana amesiame na akpo gome le efe konu wo hena didime eji eglobe dukplo lafe afodedo webe amiyoke onye hiato go ha ozu enuto egbe cho ameyoke jira nanu le moto kakakavado ameyoke ewado le do fe onu eji eglobe eya nanya kpoden na NDC dunya heha bana dekawo novelono ano dunya heha okatame bana miafofo Jerry John Rollins fetado junu yike wododahin hafitro megba ne wa ava eme novenye esia enye nufogere yuke ogbolochu miafe duklola hohwa Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rollins ameke tro megbe puire le miagbo akpenami miawe nokplemi kemia yeji aglo efe didi yike wo gbolo dari afiku Jerry John Rollins bia cho fomia pele dukobli bo asibe ne yekua wa atojoi wa cho yefe jofi acho ada fugbede achimota gbeme alo achimota forest le numa kukume a edeme gbolobe le yefe suku riyoma tefe ma yeton nona tefe ma yeton srona no le yedon kwajibe yejona le suku ada no tefe ma dada va kpo yefe megbe a ejikui edo jiku nto gake eike wono sedom na ye holo ike yipli yolea ekpo yegbo ta yefe lono ike yechona na yovo globe nature ya webe yeleba biabe nenyebe yemeka va lewa ne wa atojo acho yefe jofi afugbede achimota forest yedebe ya jof aviaun alo forest aun ye ha yenye ameke yedi enwiti fafa yedibe yedeka ya no tefereka ayata ye biabe ne wa atojo acho yefe jofi ada afugbede tefema akpena be enonye plemi bejola le miagbo ekpomi akpe ye dakpena amechio kata meji emega dakpena enyento nye dola amekenye nya mega nye programs manager fukom la gbochu te pesa te pe kenele akpena ewele donyueji ma one yira menyi bana ma kata nye amekehe egbe wona venamia nkonyenye yao jogbenwe bonsu akpenami